Welcome to Moms Writers Club. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Sarah.
And this is our very special guest, Kimberly Brower of Brower Literary. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank
Welcome.
you. Thank you for having me.
Kimberly is my literary agent, and she is absolutely fantastic. I'm just going to read her bio real fast. Kimberly fell in love with reading when she picked up her first Babysitters Club book at the age of 7 and hasn't been able to get her nose out of a book since. She holds a bachelor's in business admin from California State University and received her JD from Loyola Law School in LA. After spending a decade in the business world, it was kismet that she found herself in publishing. She takes great pride in her client list, from the debut authors to #1 New York Times bestsellers. She previously worked at a boutique literary agency before starting her own. Welcome.
All right, so we're super excited to talk to you because we authors think a lot about, the query letter and the request and the call and all those things. And we sort of course, think about it all from our point of view, and it's a really, really special thing to kind of get you here and sort of get your side of things.
Okay, so Sarah and I did an episode on the call where we talked a little bit about our own experiences with the call, with finding our agents. And then Kimberly and I had a conversation, and she kind of told me her side of it. And it was just like fascinating to see what different perspectives we had on it. And it was just really interesting to hear both sides. So we wanted to have Kimberly on to kind of talk about the agent side, because I think that is something as authors we don't get to hear about very often. And
Right,
I
it's
don't
sort
know.
of shrouded in mystery.
Yeah. You have all the secrets.
I really
Okay.
don't. But it was really funny. One of the biggest things I said to Jessica after I watched your YouTube on the call was, is that really what you think? We had such different interpretations of that call. It was very fascinating because I don't think I get to talk to authors in a way and ask them questions about things like that too, because it's always, I don't know what it's like from your side either.
Right.
So that's why when I watch your YouTube, it's very fascinating to me because I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like what I said on our call video was pretty representative of what a lot of authors feel, because some of that was like my experience and some of it was also what I've like read from other people and how they feel. So we wanted to first talk about just the query process a little bit. We'd love to hear more about it from the agent's perspective. So far as what it's like to receive queries and how you deal with your slush pile and anything and everything you want to talk about with that.
Okay. It's very overwhelming. And I think I will, because what you both tend to do, which is really great, is you talk about new agents and seasoned agents too. And I really liked how you did that because I also liked how you were like, don't be prejudiced against newer agents, right? They have more time. So I think everything you both said was very accurate on that. When you're a newer agent, that's primarily your job, is going through those queries. On one hand, you have a newer agent, or not even a new agent, someone that has a lot of time to go through those queries. And then the other hand is like someone that maybe doesn't have as much time. So they're really, but I think in both instances, for the same reason, you really need to make sure you stand out, because from the new agent side, they're just going through, let's say they go through 50 to 100 a day. Like that's just a lot of like monotonous reading. And on the other side, when it's just someone that's like, all right, I have like an hour to kill, let me go in my query box and that's when I'll go through things. I personally know exactly what I'm looking for and not looking for, or what's going to interest me or not, pretty fast. It's the authors that not only follow submission guidelines, there really is no secret. Let me just say that too. There's no secret sauce. There's no special thing. You're not slipping a $5 bill underneath the query. It's going to sound so basic, but follow submission guidelines. I don't know how many times, why that seems like the most basic instruction. So many people don't do it. And honestly, I delete my queries because I just am like, well, they don't follow directions, so I'm going to consider someone that does. Another thing is use the right name of the person. Check spelling too. Don't shorten people's names. Again, this might be very subjective, but I've heard other people say it too. And I've heard other people say when their name is spelled wrong, it just shows it's not the matter of you're spelling someone's name wrong, because that happens all the time. It's more of like an attention to detail. And that's kind of like intuitive of like, you as a writer, right? It could be, it might just be a mistake, but those are just basic outlier things. In terms of format, I've heard a lot of people be like, you have to stick to this format. I know people, when they give talks and they give instructions on query letters, it needs to be this perfect format. Me personally, I'm much more flexible on format of query letter, meaning it doesn't have to be like one paragraph this, bio here. Like, it's not so regimented. There are agencies though that have specific guidelines in how they want their query letter, so I will defer to those. But for me personally, really, I just want to know what your book's about. I think being able to articulate what your book is about in a very short, concise way is very useful. Not a lot of people know how to do it. Another thing is, I think it was a question, Jessica, that you had sent me, was should they personalize the query letter? Like, is that like important? I kind of think it is. Does that mean I will weigh a query more or less? No. It'll make me sit up straighter when I'm looking at a query. If someone mentions something specific to me, even if they just grabbed it from my bio or something like that. For example, I'm gonna give an example. I don't even know where I said this. I told somebody that in an interview or something that I liked English breakfast tea. I don't know, someone, and this person queried me and they said, oh, I read in this that you love English breakfast tea. I hope you're sitting like snuggling up, reading. It was super cute. It was done really well, but I still remember that query.
Yeah.
And it definitely, when I read that, it made me smile, and it definitely made me really read their query more carefully because I wanted to like them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I didn't end up signing them, but I still remember the query. It made me go, come on, Kimberly, like maybe you should like this one. I didn't, but it does make it stand out a little bit more, kind of like how I was saying, if you're going through 50, 100 queries, kind of makes it like, oh, you made me laugh. Oh, you made me smile. Like, that's nice, kind of thing, but not necessary. Because I know a lot of people are like, don't add anything personal, or definitely add anything personal. I personally say if you can, it's a good thing.
And sometimes it, like in my querying experience, sometimes it just feels a little like I'm reaching. You know, some agents, I watched an interview or I saw them at a conference or whatever, like I have some kind of good way to personalize something. But there's some agents where I just read the bio, I looked on Publishers Marketplace, and it just looked like a good fit. And it just felt like kind of saying something personal was a stretching. So it's good to hear that it's not like a make or break.
No, and also it can even be as if you see what authors they represent. You could be like, oh, I'm a fan of this author.
Exactly.
You don't have to go into specifics. You don't have to like give a book report on that author's book. I mean, even saying something like that, or I saw that you were interested in mysteries. Right. For me, I think it's an indicator. It's kind of like what it's saying, like subliminal message, right? Kind of like how I said the thing about spelling your name, the name, right? It's not really about the name. It's about, oh, you pay good attention to detail. It's another step forward, meaning like, oh, this person did their research. This person made an effort to not, we all know you copy and paste. I copy and paste on my, like that's the nature. But to make it seem like you're not copying pasting is a little more effort. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I think we all like to know that like we're getting interest from someone on purpose and not just because it's random.
Exactly. That you're not just one in a list of a big long batch of queries that someone's blasting out.
So kind of on that topic, so I've heard a lot of writers say something like, oh, nobody ever gets signed from querying. Do you think that you get most of your clients from querying, or what percentage do you think comes from that?
I think my recent ones have been all from querying. I entered agenting a little bit different than I think most people did. The traditional way of agenting is, you're kind of an assistant and you work your way up to where you start building your own list. And that's usually through your slush pile. I entered agenting during a time when self-publishing was really big. So I entered in like 2013, 2014. So that was when self-publishing was kind of taking, like, it was just new phenomenon. I actually did my research and I actually reached out to those authors, a lot of them. I was almost in your position, in authors' positions, because I was almost like querying them essentially. And that was then. Since then, I've signed authors through querying. I've signed authors, one through a conference. I know, Jessica, you put this on, I think it was your latest one, but it was one of those writing contests online. I have signed authors through querying. I mean, there's a reason I do it. There's a reason I look for querying. I mean, that's when you're always hoping for that next big thing you're going to find in your slush pile. So I don't think anyone poo-poos on slush pile or like querying inbox. It's important.
Yeah, I've heard agents say that they sign the majority of their clients that way, but I know that like for authors, sometimes it feels like, they send so many queries. So I'm sure it feels that way.
Yeah, but no, I think most people nowadays do it from querying.
Talking about like when you're going through a huge slush pile, when you're reading 50 or 100 queries or more a day, it sounds kind of like you're describing, and correct me if I'm wrong, like you're kind of looking for like reasons to say no and reasons to say yes, like quick ways to like sort, like, am I gonna look closer at this one? Am I gonna delete that one? And we've sort of talked about ways that, writers can not go straight to the delete pile.
The easiest way to not get deleted, in my opinion, is following submission guidelines. Yeah. That's the easiest way. I want to say there's at least 10 to 15% that I just delete because they don't. Or if it's a BCC, don't BCC, send individual emails to individual people. I get CCs too, like ones where it's like a mass email. Don't do that either.
Do you get a lot of that? That just seems.
It's a lot of BCC. Like I could tell, obviously we all know when we're BCC'd on something.
Yeah.
And those are just easy deletes. I'll speak for me personally. I don't want to speak for other agents. So me personally, I go through my query and I know what I'll like very fast. Like I know what type of genre I'm looking for, what type of book I'm looking for. There are some things that I'll just automatically, because I'm like, that's just not me. I'm not the best agent to represent those type of books. I'm not the best agent for it. So I will immediately be like, that's not for me. I need to delete those. I don't want to talk for other agents. I go in to get my number of queries down. So it is to delete. But that doesn't mean I don't read the queries. I want to be proven wrong. I want to be surprised. I want to be like, I want to sit up straighter. And I want to be like, ooh. But the query, because it's so overwhelming, you go in and you want to just like knock those numbers down.
Right. Yeah. Like clean out your inbox.
I think that's understandable.
Is that a bad thing to say? I don't know if it is, but.
So I don't think it's a bad thing to say, but I know that like many agents are very diplomatic about being like, I want to say yes to everyone. And I'm like, I don't think you do, but.
I think every agent has their own personal wants, likes, and needs in terms of what they're looking for in an author and in a project. And that could be a timing thing. That could be like, oh, I don't have anyone in my list that writes this. I would like to work with somebody that writes this. And that could just be I'm just making this could be in March when I'm doing this, and it's great. So everyone in March that sends me that type of genre, they're going to probably get more requests from me than like, okay, once I sign one, or let's hypothetically say I sign 1, 2, 3 people that do that type of genre. In the summer, I'm not going to probably want that. I'm like, I have already 3 people doing that. I don't need another person. So it is like luck. And I know that sounds so bad, but it really is. And I do also want authors to know that agents do completely understand where you're coming from during the querying process, because that's how we feel during the submission process. Yeah. So we it's like the roles were reversed. So we know what it feels like to not get a response, to having to wait forever. We know how it feels. So we're sensitive to that, or at least I am, because I do know it kind of stinks.
All right. Well, then our next question is, what makes you set up? What makes you want to request the manuscript?
I'm going to answer this question, but I want to preface this by saying I know one of the most vaguest rejections agents give is that they didn't connect with the narrative voice. That's a big rejection, like a blanket rejection. And I think a lot of authors, when they hear that, they're like, oh, great. That's true. So the answer to the question is I need to connect to the voice. Like for me, I need to be able to want to turn that page, to want to keep reading, to want to know what comes next. I think I am a little jaded. I don't sit up straighter in my seat for a lot of books anymore. So when I do, it's kind of like, ooh, this is really exciting for me because it's like, it's a surprise. It's like, it makes me go, oh, it makes me like fall in love with books all over again kind of thing, because I'm like, oh, I'm so excited about this story. I can't wait. But for me, it's the voice. And I know it's like the vaguest, easiest rejection that a lot of people get. I mean, I've gotten responses back to rejections where they're like, that was so vague. Couldn't you be more specific? You probably didn't even read this. And I was like, it's really just true. I didn't. They do. Oh, they do.
Grow up. So you're talking about like first pages, like voice. If you, how many pages do you usually request? Like with your queries?
First chapter.
First chapter. Okay. So you're talking, so do you feel like so you're talking about grasping the voice from that first chapter, not just from the query. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So for me, I personally ask for a query letter, full synopsis, and the first chapter.
After you've sort of deleted the people who don't follow instructions and that kind of first level stuff, do you always like read a little bit of the first pages, or is it sometimes like you read the query and you're like, nah, not working?
There are some, and those are ones where I'm like, it's, for example, I don't represent international military stories.
Right.
For example. So if a story that is the query letter, I'll delete that because it's just like, that's just not for me.
Yeah.
But if it fits into like what I'm looking for, I actually read the pages first. And then I read the full synopsis.
Yeah.
The full synopsis is important for me in just understanding where the author is going, what the big picture of the story is, because obviously we can't get that from not only a query letter, but a first chapter. But I read the first chapter first because if I like the voice, then I move on to the synopsis. It's almost like a tiered level. Like I got past the query letter, I'm on to the chapter, and now I'm reading the synopsis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember a whole lot of agents requesting the synopsis. So if you read the first chapter and you read the synopsis, what is it that would make you request from there? Like, is it if the synopsis makes sense to you, if you like the direction of the story? What would make you reject based off of that if you like the first chapter? Or would you?
What would make me reject based off of the synopsis?
Yeah.
If it goes in a completely different direction and I don't think the writing is good enough to be able to change that.
Got it.
So the writing, for me, writing's more important. I always say writing you can change, plot can be fixed. Plot always can be fixed, but writing you can't. You write how you write. For me, the synopsis is more of understanding vision, understanding, because for example, a chapter could start very, let's say, contemporary, and then the synopsis is like, it becomes like a fantastical apocalyptic thing, and then you're just like, oh, not where I wanted it to
go. Or some like mega historical dual time.
Yeah, you don't know maybe from just reading the first chapter. And query letters can be, I don't want to say misleading because I don't blame authors for doing it. It's not as telling. So that's why I like the synopsis.
Do you have any other advice for querying authors or things you want to say to them before we move on to talking about the call?
Can I ask you guys a question? Because I never asked an author this question. When authors talk about their like dream agent, what does that mean? And where does that come from?
Okay, I have lots of thoughts on this.
I'm really curious.
Okay, so I personally am very anti-dream agent. I have talked to so many authors who are like, oh my God, I need to work with this person or that person. I know people who are like, I cannot query anyone else till I hear back from this agent because they might be the one and they're the person I really want to work with. And I think it's just, they just don't think through it rationally in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not my MO at all either. After having queried a couple of manuscripts. I had a couple of agents who had requested from me and then given me feedback. And I'd looked at their publisher's marketplace and I was like, oh, this person's really cool. Like, really want to work with that person. So I get the feeling like I just have a really good feeling about this person.
But that's
But I
based on
do think,
something.
well, that is based on something. But I do think that a lot of people approach querying in a very kind of emotional way.
Mhm.
And being a Capricorn and the daughter of an economist, like it's just not how I roll. So Jess and I sort of are on the same page with this. And I actually think it's kind of a negative. It's like not in your interest as a querying author to kind of to have that sort of romantic attachment to the idea of a person that you've never met before.
You said it so much more eloquently than I did.
Well, and I'll say that my agent, Laura Bradford, she was awesome on paper, but like she wasn't my dream agent on paper. But once I got on the phone with her and she really grasped my and I talked to her and she talked to me about my book, I was like, oh, perfect. Like I knew immediately. So it's like, yeah, until you actually talk to somebody and they read your book and you see if it's a good match.
Some agents, myself included, is not really big on social media. Like I personally don't love social media, not because I have anything against it. I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
Like I just don't. And I'm not saying the agents that are on social media are wasting time. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I personally don't make that a priority for myself. So I am very lacking in social media. So if authors were basing on agents to work with based on that, I'd be like at the bottom of the barrel, because it's kind of like I do not have a brand. I know agents are some agents like have like an agent brand, which is super smart. There's a reason why I'm an agent. I like being behind the scenes. I like the author shining. And maybe it does become like a detriment to myself as an agent. I'm not sure.
I will tell you what my impression of you was. So I listened to like your podcasts, right? With
Rose Quinn.
Yeah. So like I had those to go off of, and that was really helpful. But I mean, other than that, like I knew what was on your website, which is like very decent. And I knew what was on Publishers Marketplace, which it was actually a little bit hard for an author to understand because you have like a lot of like subrights deals. And like as an author, I'm like, I don't know what that means because I'm used to looking for like thriller or fiction or something like that. So when you requested my full, I remember being like, I don't know very much about her, but she seems like a really good agent who like knew what you were doing. But I mean, I've heard people say that like not having a brand makes its own brand because you're like the person that doesn't have like a brand. So like you were kind of a mystery, and I don't think that hurt you. I mean, I don't know how much you're trying to build your list at this point, but I don't think it's detrimental unless you're like actively really trying to build your list and trying to get a lot of queries in.
Yeah, I sort of think, that having less of a presence on social media and, less of a brand, the people who find you and other agents like you will be looking for you. They'll be looking for specifically somebody like you. And I don't know, I would guess that it would maybe get you more targeted queries.
But back to your initial question, Jessica, any last minute things on querying that I have? This is very subjective in my personal opinion. I think authors put probably more pressure on themselves to have a perfect query than agents. I want to say care, notice. I don't need the perfect query letter. The query letter can be like average, and it doesn't, for me, it's the writing. For me, it's the book, it's the writing and the subject matter, and you either connect or you don't. I think where making your query letter really exciting is for agents that get a lot of queries standing out. I think that's one of the biggest things.
And there are a few agents who don't request any pages at all, like query only.
Yeah, that's true.
But that is very reassuring, what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't know that people don't even request. That's a lot. I actually think that, for me, again, me personally, I feel like that's very unfair because play to your strengths, and maybe writing a letter is not their best strength, but writing a book is. So, I mean, I think you need to have a little bit of leeway, a little understanding. But honestly, it's luck. It's like what mood your agent is in when they're looking at queries. Like people don't realize that that matters too, and you can't quantify that.
Right. We talk a lot about like what you can control versus what you can't, you know. And I'm big on like you can control how well you write.
Yeah.
And that's number one for me. So
Yeah.
that's great. That I love hearing that like the perfect query letter is not what you're looking for. It's a really great book.
Oh, yeah. I'd rather you spend like more time on your first chapter than like your query letter.
All right. So moving into the call, what goes into your decision to offer?
For me, there are varying stages of offering. I think it also depends on if there are other offers on the table that speeds up the timeline. There's this sense of urgency more. When I receive an email that there are offers on the table already, my timeline of reading is faster. I know my decision making is faster. There are times in that circumstance that I don't really know I'm going to offer because I haven't had enough time to think about it until I talk to the person on the phone. Whereas if it's just a query that I got and there's no offer and I just really liked the book, I might sit on it for a little bit to like see, like, do I still think about it? Do I still come back to it? What my strategy would be? Do I think I could, if there's any edits, what edits I would, so I really try to think about all that. I usually like to take a week between finishing a manuscript and like deciding on what I'm going to do with it. It's about a week. I've been known in situations like that to offer in an email. I sometimes offer first, which is really interesting because I know you guys were talking about the different, like where the offer comes. I have in the past offered over email. I have requested a phone call, offered on a phone call. I have requested a phone call and then told the author, oh, I'll get back to you within the next day or two. So it really is varying. And I want to say when the timeline obviously matters too. So when you have offers on the table, my timeline is a lot faster and I have to operate on gut a lot more. I actually think it's kind of exciting. It makes me like trust my gut. It makes me go on intuition. It just makes me, because do I really need a week to sit on it? Probably not. I just do because I can. And I know that sounds really crappy, but when it's a shorter timeline, there's this like excitement on, I really like this project. Do you think this person's going to agree with what I think? And do you think this person's will want to work with me? Is this like it has that excitement factor to it.
Yeah.
So I think emotions get involved.
Yeah, that makes sense too. And I can understand waiting a week because it's a big decision if this is someone you're going to potentially work with for a long time.
I think that kind of leads right into like what are you looking for on a call that maybe you haven't gotten from the that you haven't gotten from the manuscript? Like what additional information are you looking to get, or answers like questions that you have? Does that make sense?
Yes. One of my biggest things I like asking is what are your author goals? Like, where do you want to be in like 3 to 5 years? What are those goals? I had a call with someone that I liked their manuscript. I think it was a thriller manuscript. And they told me they are a paranormal fantasy author and that's what they want to do. So that was really helpful to get on the call to find out, because for me, when I sign on author, it's hopefully for long term. It's for the like to help grow the author's career, to grow with the author. And I want to make sure I'm the best agent for that author and what that author wants to write. So even though I liked their one project, if they want to be something very different, that's very useful to know. And that's not something I necessarily get in a query.
This is maybe a weird question, but like, is there anything an author could do on the call that would, if you love their manuscript and you get on the phone with them, is there anything they could do on the call where you'd be like, no, I don't think I can work with this person?
I think it's hard to hide ego. And I think if people have an ego, or I think there have been times where maybe I haven't, but I've heard of authors having especially when they have offers on the table, like my shit don't stink kind of attitude. Like, like I know what I'm doing. I'm like, you should be honored to work with me, that kind of thing.
Right,
Where
right.
I agree, it should be that way. It should be that the agent, it is a mutual thing, and the agent should be honored to work with the author, but it kind of goes both ways too. It's like, it's a mutual respect, it's a mutual, and I think it's hard to hide humility. I mean, some people that don't know how to show humility, and I think you can just tell, just kind of like if you're at a dinner party and you meet someone new, you will know instantly, they're like, I can be friends with this person or I can't.
Right.
It's a little different, but kind of the same. You just personality.
Right. So you are looking for somebody who you feel like you can work with as a person.
Definitely.
It's not like it's mostly the book, but it's not 100% the book, maybe.
Yes, and that's me. Maybe that's me. Maybe
Yeah.
there are some agents that don't care about personality, and all they care about is a really good book.
No,
Because
from the interviews and things that I've read, that is true. And it's funny, when I was getting on the call with Kat Klein at Graydon House, who was going to offer on my book,
I
I was
love
like,
that.
oh, I'm so excited. Anyway, I was super nervous, and I was like, Laura, what do I do? Like, what? And she's like, relax. You just have to. She just wants to know that you're not an uptight douchebag. Those were her very words. So I was like, I that struck me that that's maybe part of the call too.
It is. It's just kind of knowing, like, if I ask a question, do they answer the question, or do they walk around the question? Or is our communication styles the same? I'm a very blunt, transparent person. I try, or at least I try to be, and not everybody, that might not fit a lot of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to show my true colors on the call and who I am, because I don't want to bait and switch somebody.
Right.
You just want to know how you're going to vibe with someone and make sure it's someone you want to work with. And also, if they're going to be an asshole, you don't want to work with them.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Well
Yeah,
put.
that's it. Yeah.
I mean, it's a business relationship.
Because as an agent, you're giving bad news in addition to good news a lot of the time. Sometimes you have to break bad news, and that's not fun.
Yeah.
So if the person, you and that person already have like an acrimonious, not so great relationship, or like the communication isn't there, that makes that job a lot harder.
Yeah.
So,
or if you have to make hard decisions between, option A and option B. Yeah.
I also think if the and I don't know how I can tell, but I can, if the author will trust what I have to say. One of my agents was telling me about about a call that she had, and she says the author kept second guessing everything I said. When she would, like, basically the author would ask the agent a question, she would answer it, and then she would second guess it. And I was like, ooh, that's not a good sign that she's going to trust anything you have to say. Like, she's going to, so maybe, or I don't know if it was a male or female author. So I was like, ooh, that kind of says that, like, there might be trust issues there, and maybe you're not, because she was a newer agent. So that also could come into play. Let me ask you this. I have a question for you. When you're talking to newer agents, let's say an agent that either may not have a deal on Publishers Marketplace, or maybe only has like a few, what is the mindset with that? How do you navigate that?
My first offer was from a new agent. She'd been an agent for 6 months, but I also knew that she'd been an intern for 2 years. So I knew that like she had some experience. I asked her about her mentor, like who she had to go to as a resource. And I wanted to know like what her thoughts were on revisions, because I felt like I was coming to the conclusion my book needed revisions. And I wanted to talk to her clients about how she was to work with. Like, those are the big things for me. And then also just knowing that she came from an agency where they took good care of their new agents. But I mean, I had no issue going with the newer agent if they felt like the right one otherwise. And those were kind of the things I wanted to feel out.
Yeah. And I think this is again where the whole dream agent idea is not in author's best interest, because there are a lot of really good newer agents, and they're also maybe agents that are new to agenting, but not new to publishing. You know, my friend of mine locally signed with an agent. She was, I think, that agent's like second client and her first sale, but she had been an editor for years, and she was in this new agency with this other partner who was a very experienced agent. And they just had a great rapport. You know, so all the other pieces fit.
You know that that person's new at their job, but that's true for anything. If you're hiring a financial advisor, you know, knowing that they're new, you want to make sure that they know what they're doing,
and then they have someone to go to.
Yeah, just making sure that they have the support around them to do what needs to be done well.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one's actually backing up a little bit, and you sort of answered this already, but is there a moment while reading a manuscript that you know you are going to offer, or do you like always wait to the end? And I know you said you wait like a week and like think about it when you have the time to do that, but is there ever like, is there a moment, or is it a vibe you get through the whole book? Or
yes, I knew. Okay, I'll speak very first. I knew I was going to offer on you when I read your male protagonist chapter, without giving anything away.
That's awesome. That's
you know exactly what I'm saying. But when I read that first one, I was like, oh yeah. So I knew. To be fair, I already knew you had offers, so
that's true.
I was on a faster timeline, but I knew then. So
that's awesome. Sarah's read the book, so she also knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you telling me that.
So yeah, I like I said, I think that's where timeline comes in line. So I think an agent, when they're on a strict timeline, they're looking for things to either like or not like about a manuscript, especially when it's on a faster timeline, when you need to make a decision quick. If you can't, for example, if I couldn't get into like the first chapter and it took me like 3 tries to read, I'd be like, okay, this is probably just not for me. The unfortunate thing with being on timeline though is in situations like that, if it's hard for me to get into the first chapter and first thing, sometimes I like put it aside and think, oh, maybe today mentally I'm not in the best place to consider new work or do things like that. So I'll like come back to this at another time because I really was interested in reading it. But if I'm on a timeline, the unfortunate thing with that is I'll be like, oh, I guess it's a pass.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. How do you prep for a call? Like, what do you do leading up to it?
I don't really prep that much. I think it's just because that's why I felt really bad, because when you guys were talking about like all the things you did and you're like figuring what like answers to have, and I was like, oh, I feel bad because I don't really
you did read the book.
Yes, and I just review any notes I made. I talked it out with my assistant who also read the book. Okay, I do prepare. I do think about what my strategy is for the book and make sure I can articulate things that I need to say, whether it's about like edits that might be needed or questions I want to ask the author specifically about the book, that like to know in which direction the book might go. Would I pitch it if I want to pitch it this way, what questions I need to ask, see if the author has the same vision. Because one of the things, this is something I talk to my agents about a lot, and I don't know if authors realize this. So when you're talking to an author and you haven't offered yet, or they have multiple offers and you don't know if they're going to sign with you, how much you talk about what editorial a manuscript needs. Because early on, I personally was victim to this. That sounds so bad, and that's not what I mean. But and my agents have been where they'll be on a call, they're really excited about a manuscript, and they'll be like, these are all the edits I think needs, and the person will do it and then sign with another. Like the person will take the edits and sign with another agent, and they kind of just gave all these notes for free. It's the nature of like, you have to be able to articulate what edits, because I feel like that's fair on a call, but there's a balance too. So in preparation, I figure out what I want to say to an author in terms of that. If like, for example, I'm like, oh, I have a really great idea for a twist that would make this book like, oh my, amazing. maybe I won't say it. I don't know. I don't, like, I think it's really dependent on the call, but I do try to figure out editorially if there's any notes I want to make to that. Because really, while the author is definitely interviewing me, I view it that's the primary goal of the call. In a way, the agent's sort of interviewing the author to try to be like, not so much be like, are you good enough to work with me? More of like, this is my vision for this book, but it might not fit your vision. I'm trying to figure out if your vision, and because this is your book, works with my vision, because obviously I wouldn't want to ask you to make your book something it's not.
It's funny because you describe it now and I'm like, that actually sounds, like a very normal thing to want to establish with an author on the call.
Yeah, when I talk to all like my agents or any interns I have, one of the biggest things I say is like, before you decide you want to sign an author or work on a project, what is your strategy? Like, if you can't answer me like what your vision is, what your strategy for this book is in terms of like how you would pitch it, you either need to sit on it a little longer, or you might not be the right agent for it. But you can't just be like, this is good. Okay, this is good. Why is this good?
Right.
In my preparation, that's what I try to figure out.
Yeah. I just think it's so interesting that you said that the call is primarily the author interviewing the agent, because I think that authors really feel like the call is primarily the agent interviewing the author.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it's really interesting. And I think I heard another agent say this. It is our job as agents to make sure your book, it's really your book, you're the asset. I'm just someone to like help facilitate it. I feel like I'm honored to work with authors that I feel like I can help their fulfill that sounds really corny. Help their dreams get made, like, like their author dreams.
Yeah.
But that's my role. But I don't think it's a matter of like, you should be honored to work with me, because like, what am I bringing other than making your goals? You know what I mean? Like, I view authors as the asset, and I'm just kind of like the person like helping them.
I just remember so clearly, because querying authors, I guess, by and large, are probably debut authors. I mean, there are a few that are coming from small presses or might have
looking for a second agent
past or something like that. But I did say by and large, most of us are kind of first timers, and I remember getting off those calls and being like, that was really weird. Like they were pitching to me. And I was surprised about that, but I sort of am gaining some perspective now. It was very fun and validating. It was very validating after sending out all those queries and getting a lot of no thank yous, and to talk to somebody who's like, here's why you should pick me, and
Well, that's okay. So what does an author want to hear to make them want to pick you?
I wanted to know revisions in mind. I wanted to know communication style. I wanted to know that I felt comfortable talking to the agent, that they would just be someone good to work with, that our goals kind of met up. What about you?
Well, just on a purely sort of like emotional note, all three of the people I talked to like kind of softened up the ground by telling me how much they loved my book, which as a querying,
like agenting 101, they need to do that.
And it works. You've sent out all these query letters you've been writing for years, and to just get on the phone with somebody who's like, I loved your book. I stayed up until 2 a.m. reading it, and I loved this and I loved that. And then you're just like, okay, tell me more. Otherwise, I like to hear your strategy. I mean, like you're saying, that's what you prepare ahead of time. I really wanted to know, how close to submission ready do you think this book is? Like, what would be your plan? And I got really different answers to that. One of the agents that I talked to wanted me to really change part of the book, which I was open to doing. And another one kind of liked it pretty much the way it was, needed a little bit of tweaks. But so really, yeah, like, what's your plan? Where do you, like, I sort of have an idea of where I see it in the marketplace, but where do you see it? Maybe even what imprints might you pitch this to, or kind of just what's your plan? What would be your big picture strategy for my book?
You know what? I like got to the point though where I just felt like I was, and not necessarily with our call, but on different calls, I felt like I was just like listing off question after question. And that at some point felt awkward to me. Did you ever feel like awkward
No.
about asking questions? That might be more my
I didn't ask a
personality.
ton of questions. Actually, I mean, I had a great big long list of questions, but the agents that I talked to knocked, 80% of them off my list before I even had to ask them. But there is definitely like an interpersonal aspect of it too. Like, can I communicate with you? Can I swear on the phone with you? Like stuff like that. I don't know. Like, can I be myself? Do I feel like I can be myself? I don't know. That's the part of it that's harder to pin down. I like to really see it as a business decision, but it is a personal relationship too.
What else was on your list of questions?
Yeah.
Revise and resubmit.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't you? What was the question again? It was what makes you decide between passing, revise and resubmit, and offering? Kind of like
some of our viewers were curious what your thoughts were.
for me, I kind of always go back to like this plot can change, writing cannot. When I ask for a rise and resubmit, it's where the writing's really there, but the plot isn't. Or the plot just needs too many changes, just like to commit to it as an agent. But like I see something there and I want to see if they can kind of take these notes and run with it. The people that fall in the revise and resubmit are usually for me the really good writers that have concept or plot issues.
I think that's mostly everything. Is there anything else you want to tell authors about the agent side of the call? Anything we should know?
Side of anything.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Or questions.
Anything.
So fun.
We're just people. There's a reverence to agents, and I don't know I think that's nice, but we are people too, in terms of, if we get a rejection, let's not be mean. Or if we don't respond right away, let's not be mean to queries. Publishing is actually a small world. So always be professional, even if you disagree or anything like that, because you never know where things might turn up and what might happen. And things get around. So if someone is nasty, it kind of can get around in publishing. And also knowing our time frames. I think that's something we didn't talk about. The time frame and whether or not, if you don't hear back within the first 4 weeks, does that mean they just don't like it? And my honest answer is no. Like, I think I'm still going through like November queries, which is really bad and embarrassing, but that's just really true. Don't assume that, because everyone has their own life going. I feel like in 2020 and now in 2021, like work just like quadrupled.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but it has. There was an editor on Twitter, I don't know, you both probably saw it, who gave stats on her emails in like 2018, 2019, 2020, and then 2021, and like how many more emails she has in her inbox. Wow. And I was like, oh yeah, that explains why I'm more busy. Like it doesn't register until you see those numbers, and you're like, oh, that's why. So we try, as agents, we try to get through the query pile. We really do try. Don't take it personal. Don't stare at Query Tracker. But we get it. Because I look at the calendar because of like when I'm on submission. I'm like, should I check in yet? And actually, for submissions, it's through COVID and work from home and everything now, my timelines are adjusted. Pre-COVID, I would check in with editors every 3 to 4 weeks on a submission basis. Now it's like post-COVID and work from home and everything like that. Like, I have to give people way more time because it's just different. So it does apply. It does trickle down. So we do feel it on the agency side as well.
Yeah.
I know you're not open for queries right now. Do you want to talk about?
Oh, can I just say something about that?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I tweeted something about this. When an agent is closed to queries, it usually means like one or two things. One or a few things. Their query inbox is so large that they are just continually just falling behind. If they don't close it, they're just never going to get to catch up. So a lot of people close just to catch up. A lot of people close because they're like, I just have too many clients and deadlines that I can't manage that. I probably shouldn't say this. The reason I close to queries is so no one expects answers from me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But do I see queries that still come in? Yes, I do. But I just don't respond unless it's something exciting. So that's not to say if an agent is close to it, jam their inbox with queries, but it's also saying like there's different reasons why an agent may be closed. And like for me, I still do look at them, but I just don't. There's no expectation level.
Pretend you're not.
Yes, exactly. It's a pretend you're not. So
that's dangerous information to disclose.
I know. But I mean, it is, it is what it is.
Okay, well, I know people want to know when you will be open to queries again. Do you want to answer that question?
My goal is before the end of the year.
Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us today. This was really fun, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. Where can we find you online?
Browerliterary.com. I don't know what my Instagram handle is.
That's awesome. We might look it up and like post it.
Yeah, we'll post it down below.
That's totally fine. Yeah, this was fun. Thank you so much for having me. I hope this was helpful or insightful.
This is
great.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I will talk to you both later.
Great. Bye.